there are a number of what you think of as major shifts, earthquakes if you like, in the way that IT is evolving. So if you think back to client server, then with the PC you had the proliferation of computer power to people and different architecture. And then we went to the web, we had different software architecture again. And the trend that was being predicted mid-90s was that mobile technology would become a big thing, and now it's taken off really dramatically. The next thing will be embedded processors. Processors embedded in just about everything, embedded in buildings, embedded in all the utilities, embedded in transport, embedded in just about everything you use. And all of them generating data by the moment. So if you want to look to the big trend now that everybody seems to talk about is big data, which isn't really well defined, but there's going to be an increasing volume of data, and it's going to be a dramatic increase over what we have now. So we think in terms of petabytes right now, we will think in terms of exabytes. And we maybe even think in terms of yottabytes. It's like, it's that kind of escalation is going to continue, because when the embedded world takes off, there's just going to be a dramatic amount of data, much more than we have now. When you've got this proliferation, you actually have to have a cleverer middle layer. So that's where data virtualization comes in, because data virtualization isn't just transfer of data, it's also the efficient staging of data in almost real time. You know, not we think of putting data into a data mart, because that's the staging of data really for queries. We think in terms of just having a layer that can serve all of the applications, whatever they are, and just bring data to the right place at the right time, at the right speed. Every organization's context is different. So, you know, some people already have big data problems just in terms of the volume. Other organizations don't necessarily have that. So any specific organization, it depends on what their context is, but this is about architecture. It's like it has become so complex in terms of at least medium to large organizations, that to manage that application load and to provide the service that you're hoping to provide with that, it requires architecture now, and it requires architecture, you know, beyond service-oriented architecture. There needs to be an information-oriented architecture as well that kind of complements the service-oriented architecture. But also, it's going to get worse. I mean, we've thought in terms of transactions, and we live in terms of the interactive applications. We live in a transactional world, but it's going to be an event-driven world, and events are much more like atoms of activity, and that's going to require an event-driven architecture, and that hasn't emerged yet. You know, we see streaming data and stuff like that, which is the beginning of the event-driven world. Well, you know, when we've got embedded processors everywhere, when we've got an extraordinary number of sources of data, whether you're talking about, you know, social media or whatever, you know, we are going to have systems that don't really look like the systems that we have nowadays. They're going to be event-driven, they're going to deal in atoms, and they're going to be far more flexible in terms of what you can do with them. Or else we're going to fail.